Good evening and good morning, gentlemen. There are no ladies I see, though there's somewhere expected. Before we start now we are on recording. So before I start the session, I will request Brigadier Sandeep, President IIRF, to welcome our guest speakers and the audience today. Brigadier Sandeep, sir.
Good evening, everyone from India. Good morning to Admiral Sinha, sir. And good afternoon to the person who has joined from West Germany, or now Germany. On behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, I welcome our esteemed guest speakers of the day and our esteemed audience who has spared their valuable time to participate in today's discussion on theatre command in Indian context. Integration and jointness of three services have been talked about since the last 2.5 decades. The formation of Andaman Nicobar Command and IDS and later Strategic Forces Command were the initial steps towards integrating the three services. Though a number of studies on this aspect were carried out, the reports were not given the required impetus since last 2 decades. The first CDS, however, was appointed in January 2020, but with added title of, that Secretary Department of Military Affairs with a lot of administrative duties given to him. His main charter was to integrate three services to form theatre commands. Finally, the Government of India has exhibited its political will to speed up the integration by passing the Inter-Service Organization Command, Control and Discipline Bill during the last Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha session in August. So now it is for the CDS and three service chiefs to get the restructuring of operational commands. Where, at what level of command and how the jointness and integration should start, how to get over the turf protection issues, which is a major issue, how to manage the change, how to train the commanders at all levels to integrate, integration of resources. These are certain issues which needs to be studied and solutions found. How to build up the capability, keep the operational readiness and effectiveness during the transformation to theaterization is also a matter that needs to be resolved. And I am sanguine that most of these matters will come up during the talk and question answer session today. And for taking the discussion forward, we have three distinguished veterans who has left positive imprints in the armed forces. Today's discussion will be chaired by Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, and our other honored guest speakers are Air Marshal Anil Khosla and Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh. Though all of them are well-known personalities, nevertheless, I have the privilege to give a brief introduction of each of them. Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Nausena Medal and Bar, was commissioned in the aviation wing of the Indian Navy as a combat pilot in 1976. As a frontline naval aviator, Admiral Sinha was part of the team that inducted and operationalized the first ever vertical takeoff landing aircraft, the Sea Harrier, in the Indian Navy. In his long illustrious career, Admiral Sinha commanded many frontline naval ships and later became the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff. He later went on to become Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Western Naval Command, a post from which he retired in 2014. He is now the Trustee of India Foundation, member of the Governing Board of the Indian Council of World Affairs, member of the Executive Council of Manohar Parrikar Institute, and advisor to St. Joe's. We are privileged to have you, sir, and we are privileged to have him to chair the discussion today. Our second distinguished guest is Air Marshal Dr. Anil Khosla, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Vayu Sena Medal, who was commissioned into the fighter stream of Indian Air Force in December 1979. He had been an ace Jaguar pilot who has over 4,000 years of flying experience with specialization in maritime road. He commanded the Jaguar squadron assigned to a maritime role. Some key appointments he held in the Indian Air Force were the Principal Director of Information and Electronic Warfare, Air Officer Commanding Headquarter Maritime Air Operations, Air Officer Commanding J&K Area, Director General Inspection and Safety, SASO Central Air Command, and Director General of Air Ops in Air Headquarters. Later, he commanded Eastern Air Command as the AFCNC and finally became the Vice Chief of Indian Air Force. Air Marshal Anil Chopra holds a doctorate degree and is an analyst and distinguished fellow of USA and CAPS and an advisor to Synergia Foundation. Our third guest speaker of today is Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, Param Vishis Seva Medal, Ati Vishis Seva Medal. He was commissioned into the 9th Battalion of Maratha Light Infantry. He is an alumni of National Defence College, Defence Service Staff College, College of Defence Management, and Naval Postgraduate School, California, USA. He has served in various terrains and theatre of operations in India and in the UN as military observer. Apart from serving as an instructor in the College of Defence Management, the general officer has commanded an infantry battalion, a brigade, and a division in J&K. The officer also commanded a corps in the east and thereafter headed the Army War College at Mau. He was the Chief of Staff of Eastern Army Command during the Doklam standoff. Today, he is better known as a thinking and speaking general, prolific writer, speaker, and active member of the Lucknow-based sister think tank, Strike. I once again welcome you all and feel very confident that with so many illustrious speakers, today's talk will be very interesting and educative. I now request Group Captain Raj Mehta to give a brief background to today's talk and invite the chair to initiate the discussion with his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Sandeep sir. Well, I don't think any one of us disagree that we are all living in a very turbulent time. Ukraine shows no end. I believe US has just inquired from India what will be its role if conflict breaks out in South China Sea. You see, conflict is no longer residing in the realm of remote possibility. It is inching closer and closer to us by the day. Considering the existing security environment at our borders and our neighborhood in the South China Sea, India is giving a relook at its own defense preparedness, capabilities, and approach towards tackling various kinds of conflict in the three sectors identified by it. This is required more so to meet the challenges of a highly technical, multi-frontal, multi-dimensional, contactless, as well as hybrid kind of warfare visualized for 21st century. With the passing of Inter-Services Organization Bill 2023, the ball has been set to roll, as the President IIRF just brought out, towards greater integration of the three wings of the armed forces. Now, that brings a very pertinent question back to the center stage. Can the nation's air power be split? Much meaningful discussion on this subject rests on the correct understanding of the term theater command, or its much talked about alternative, that is the integrated command and control structure. We are fortunate to have with us today three very authoritative speakers to deal with the above issues, and we truly look forward to getting enlightened by their talk. With this brief introduction to the topic, I will request the chair, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, to take charge of this debate and conduct the discussion further. Over to you, Admiral Sinha, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Group Captain Mehta and Brigadier Sandeep, for inviting me to participate in this and chair a panel where I have very little work to do because we're such distinguished two of my colleagues. In fact, Air Marshal Khosla and I have served together when he was the AOC Maritime Air Operations in Bombay. It's really a tough subject, but I think IIRF has done a good job of getting a real tri-service composition to this panel. That helps. That really helps. And all the panelists have reached the pinnacle of their careers. They understand the warfare, the nature of changing warfare, changing nature of warfare, etc., etc. So just to give a little bit of backdrop, this term itself has undergone a number of iterations. It started with a integrated command. It started with then changed to joint command, and now finally it has turned into a theater command. Why I'm saying this is because, in 2010, 11, 12, when we were steering this from the IDS headquarters, at that time, it was imagined that the Chief of Defense Staff, who wasn't there at that time, he will lead the Joint Service Commands of the SFC, Cyber Command, Special Forces Command, Andaman Nicobar Command, and what have you. The one and the commands which are not in the domain of the commanders in chief. Though the Kargil committee report, it did lay down that we have too many commands. Everybody gives this example: 17 commands in 17 places. And therefore there is need to have a centralized sort of decision making. A lot of argument was given that in 1971 war we fought together and we won the war. We broke up Pakistan into two pieces. We didn't have a joint command, but we fought together. It was many people suggested that it should be joint planning and independent execution. So there are various models which are discussed, which have been discussed, and as the President IRF mentioned, that there have been a lot of iterations, but we are at a stage where now the government, just like the Goldwater Nicholas Act, the government is determined to make it happen, and therefore our views and discussions rightly should be heading in the direction that Group Captain Mehta mentioned, as to how do we actually now handle, now that the government has decided. We have a CDS. Unfortunately, we lost the first one, God bless his soul, but we have a second one, and passing of the act was primarily to give the disciplinary powers to the commanders, the joint commanders or integrated commanders, because we didn't have that. We had this problem every time there was a disciplinary case in either in SFC or in Andaman Nicobar Command or in IDS headquarters. Unfortunately, though the investigation could be done by the commanders in chief as per their orders, but the punishments or the administrative action could not be given by the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff or the commanders in chief of these two commanders that I mentioned, because the personnel of these three services were guided by individual service acts, and therefore you can't bypass the acts of parliament. And it had to go back to the service headquarters, and therefore justice was delayed. It wasn't denied any time, I can assure you that, but it was very much delayed, and by then the impact of or the deterrence value of that punishment used to get lost, because we believe that administrative actions and punishments are meant for more to deter people than to punish. It must have impact on rest of the people, that look, you cannot do this and get away. So that was the intention of this last act, but it has also given a lot of disciplinary powers to the commanders in chief or the command or the unit commanders who may be commanded by a different service in the future event of theaterization of command. Because the subject is theater command in Indian context, so what I'll do is, with this background, I will just leave it there, because we got very, very distinguished speakers. Mind you, we have to listen to them because the views are different. Obviously, they have to be different because we are all from three different services and we have our own ethos and values and the visions of fighting a war, joint war, how it is to be fought. We all want the war to be fought together, no doubt about that. But how it is to be fought is what we are going to be discussing, and what should be the future structure. So we will give full respect to views, and we will not butt in between. And I will request both my distinguished colleagues to spend anything between 15 to 20 minutes. Is that okay, Anil?
No problem, sir. You ring the bell, sir, whenever you want us to stop.
Dushyant?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So 15, 20 minutes, we are all, and if you want to extend it beyond, it's all right. And then I'll take over and, we'll start taking questions from audience, and we will request the panelists to take up the answer. Just one correction, Group Captain Mehta. I'm commissioned in 1974. You made me 2 years younger, so thank you very much. But I'm actually 2 years older. So, with that, may I invite Air Marshal Khosla to take the podium first. All yours, Anil.
Yeah, I think as per the program, sir, Lieutenant General was supposed to speak first, so I'm open to anything, sir.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter, sir.
you go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
It's done with some great purpose.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can hear me clearly, sir.
We can, sir. We can. Yes, sir.
So thank you, Chair, and thank you, President IIRF, Brigadier Sandeep Kumar, for giving me this opportunity, and also to Captain Mehta for getting me here. And sir, you made me a doctor, but I'm not yet a doctor. I'm just got 2 MPhil degrees. That's all so far. Okay. What I'll do is, sir, the subject is very, very interesting, and as Chair said, these are my personal views and not necessarily views of the Indian Air Force. I retired 4 years back. So these are my views, and they will be totally, divergent from whatever has been said so far. And so what I've been asked to speak is basically 1 or 2 aspects of air power, which I will take about 5 to 7 minutes, and then I'll get on to the topic of topic in hand. So, and about the air power, thereafter we'll look into the question answer session, which is the most interesting part of any interaction as such. So coming to the air power, the first aspect which I was asked to cover is, how does the air power fit into the national or political or military objectives? How does it achieve? So recently, last year, 2022, the 3rd doctrine of the Indian Air Force, that the 3rd version of the doctrine has been made public. Chapter 3 of it covers in detail how does the air power and the IA fit into the whole national security gambit. And it's a very nicely written chapter, and in case somebody is interested, it's available easily. It talks about national vision, values, aim, interest, strategy, all aspects related to security and defense. So out of that, I'll just cover what IAF has written in the doctrine as far as the objectives are concerned, after considering all the aspects which I covered, which I talked about earlier. So it says first is obviously defense of the airspace, that is air and space domain, and defense of that both over territorial domain as well as in the maritime domain, that is the airspace. So basically, what was earlier, or is it called air defense? Second is prosecution of offensive operations in parallel, that is offensive independently as well as jointly. Then third is conventional as well as strategic deterrence. Fourth is assistance in internal security matters, and fifth is the HADR, domestic as well as abroad, international, wherever the situation occurs. Aid to civil authorities, peacekeeping operations, etc. Sixth comes as military diplomacy, and where air power is also, recently the multilateral exercise has been announced, which will be coming up in another month or 2. Thereafter, the last is, promoting self-sufficiency, which is actually a very good step, and which is a much required at the moment, getting your defense industry indigenous as well as technological independence. That means we can infuse technology into on our own. The second aspect is, the potential of the air power. Actually, potential of the air power is still growing. It is not yet finished. I mean, it's in 110 years, but still a lot of new things are coming in, and still it has got a lot of potential. And once again, the doctrine of 2022 has a full chapter on air strategies and basically covers exactly how the orchestration of air war will take place. And it divides, firstly, it divides into 3 zones, that is peace, no war, no peace, and the third is a war. And in these talking about, so in the 3 conditions, that is peace, no war, no peace, and the third one is the war. And it talks about continuous operations, non-kinetic operations, and kinetic operations. So 9 squares, you can imagine, it talks about. And basically, I'll just quickly run over it. Everything is known to all the audience. Peacetime, it talks about AD, deterrence, air diplomacy, national building, basically, roles related to out of area contingencies, HADR, CICT, unit peacekeeping, aid to civil, which I covered earlier, support to agencies like NDRF and NSG. Dushyant ke saath we did a lot of work when I was DG Air Ops, air sustenance of all the military and paramilitary, then preparation, training, etc. In no war, no peace conditions, once again, info dominance, shaping operations, which talk about again mobility, deterrence, influence ops, capacity enhancement. So all those actions. And then it talks about external security ops and internal security ops. External security ops, when it talks about punitive strikes, special operations like the one we did in Balakot, where the offensive application was there. And internal security, as I said, the CICT ops, there are full role of may not be direct application of firepower from the air on our own people, but there are a whole lot of supporting roles also which are carried out. Wartime is interesting. It is divided into 7 odd headings. One is, command and control of air ops, basically covering all the network centricity of the whole operations. Second is control of the air, where you talk about the air supremacy, air superiority, and favorable air situation and its importance. And third is talks about counter air operations, that is offensive application, as well as the defensive, that is the air defense part of it. And offensive also, there are a whole lot of airfield attacks, fighter sweep, escorts, long range vectors, utilization. There are a whole lot of things in that. The fourth is the one which talks about coordinated application of air power with the sister services and the surface forces and the CSFO. And in air-land battle, air interdiction as well as back layer interdiction, and in maritime role, anti-shipping and coastal strikes. Then it talks about strategic air operations, both conventional and nuclear, as well as psychological ops, PSYOPs. Then talks about enabling operations related to transported operations, ISR, AWACS, AW, air-to-air refueling, EW, in the role of special ops, CSR, CASOVAX, airborne assault, SHBO, all those issues. Then enhancing operations related to air mobility, info warfare, and cyber warfare. So these are various elements which it talks about. So idea of bringing out this is that, one, air element is desirable by everyone. Even surface forces need to have their own air arm. But what happens is, because whatever air arm they have, it should be applied as per the tenets of those tenets of warfare of the individual service, the philosophy of operations. Like US Air Force has got 4 air forces, US Air Power, I would say. Air Force, Army, Naval Wing, as well as Marines have their own this thing. And each one is 3 to 4 times that size of maybe India. But can we afford it? We cannot afford that at the moment. So in Indian context, what happens is, since we cannot afford it, at the moment, we have to have it centralized and utilize it wherever required, and do sort of a parallel operations, like Chair said, central planning and decentralized execution. Okay, I'll switch to the second part now, the perspective on theater command. I'll put few things in perspective. One is that I'm not against the concept of theater command, but the relevance is mainly theater command is, when the expeditionary, far away from the land and all services, all 3 services are operating, or maybe more than 3 services, some agencies are also there, because the war is becoming a whole of government approach. And that is when this concept is required. The second aspect is jointness, integration, fusion. These are 3 words. They are not semantics. They are 3 words and got a specific connotation. And China has shown the way. I'll come back to it later. Third perspective I want to put is, for achieving jointness, synergy, or whatever word you want to use it, theaterization is one way of achieving it, not the only way of achieving it. Okay, now few questions which we need to ask ourselves before we decide on, okay, theater command is required or not command. Firstly, has the time come, keeping the geopolitical situation in mind, economic state in mind, the resources in mind? My answer is not yet. Second is it on the top priority as far as reorganization is concerned? My answer once again is no, not at the moment. I'll cover my idea of what are the priorities which we need to first address before getting into this theater command. Third is, does it cater for future warfare? My answer is yes, to some extent, but not fully. And we should take lessons from China, and China is our main adversary, and I'll cover about it, that what to expect in future. Fourth is, are we just blindly following others, or are we, tuning it according to we will talk about it maybe a little bit. So let's see US. We've been talking about US. US is, following global responsibility. Okay, its theaters are all over the world. Okay, it has got hardly any threat to this mainland. With these theaters, the Indo-Pacific you take, it 10 times India's size, almost 10 times. The air resources of US, I just covered, 4 air forces, 10,000 plus aircraft. It has got 4 functional commands: cyber, space, special op, transport. We have still reached only second phase of this project. I was a wing commander when this project has started off, forming cyber, space, special ops, and strategic commands and all. We are still not reached that stage. Whereas US is studying the China model, where they made a separate service, JSSF, Joint Strategic Support Force, separate service putting cyber, space, info, and electronic warfare all in one, info warfare all in one command. That is the future of warfare. Okay, then US and China both have well-defined, well-established defense industry. Are we there? Not yet. Okay, let's check China. The PLA is owned by the party CPC. Okay, it's like BJP owning the 3 services. It uses it to rule the country. We talk about Western Theater Command is all over India, and it is about 1.4 times our area. It has got boundary or responsibility with 12 plus countries. It's not only India. Okay, you take any map and see, superimpose, you'll realize why it is so big and why there are 4 smaller commands all along the eastern coast of China. You see the population density, you'll understand. To rule the country, the Western Theater Command, the population density is very, very low. Whereas in the eastern sector, there's much more population density. Okay. We need to learn from China a lot of good things we can pick up. One is, military civil fusion, MCF, under 6 verticals. JSSF, I talked about, cyberspace, info, electronic warfare. No contact warfare, second artillery and drones, use of unmanned platforms. Okay, technology infusion, gray zone warfare. These are the future challenges which we are going to face. Okay, are we giving a proper direction to our reorganization? China has got 11 or 12 white papers it has published from the time it started its modernization, and reorganization is one part of its military modernization. It is a top-down approach. What we are doing is, I don't know, bottom-up approach or top-down approach or middle approach, I'm not sure. Then we talk about AD command out of nowhere. We call it low-hanging fruit. I mean, national security is not a fruit picking. Okay, then we are at times calling it geography-based commands, at times we're calling adversary-based commands, at times we're calling it service-based commands, but then we say leave the Northern Command out because it has got different roles and other things. Then we take paramilitary also, and I mean, it's a bit confusing. Okay. We need to have a multi-agency integration approach. That means whole of government approach we are talking about. We need to have a command and control charter of duties sorted out of everyone, Defense Secretary, NSA, CDS, chiefs. We need to have the rules of business, amended accordingly. All those things we need to do it. Okay, having said that, another 2 or 3 minutes, I will give my priority list, which I feel is the priority. Firstly, Andaman Nicobar Command. We have a tri-service joint command, which has been there for now very long. We call it, it is called, steel iron curtain because of the strategic location it has. And I think we need to convert it into steel curtain rather than iron curtain. We need to fortify it. We need to put in more assets. We need to develop it. And not only militarily, these islands can have a lot of potential for development, keeping, of course, in mind the sensitivity of the people there. It can be a launch pad for all our HADR operations. So Andaman Nicobar, like we talked about this bill which has been passed, this should have been passed long time back, nearly 20 years back. I think Admiral Sinha would have had a much better time as a Sincan commander if this bill had been passed. And along with this bill, if all the land had been said that it is a defense land and not army land, navy land, and the air force land. Half my hair were lost during DG Air Ops and as vice chief in sorting out Andaman Nicobar command land issues and airfield development and network centricity, ops room, land, and I don't know what all this thing. Anyway, similar structure we need to have on the western front. Those islands are smaller, maybe not this big, but a similar structure can be there. That is my first priority. Secondly, we need to have joint commands for cyber, space, special operations. These are the future warfare. This project was started when I was a wing commander. I remember the space, and we said in 3 phases. We reached second phase where the division has been formed, but that too is not functional fully. As I said, United States had these commands for years. They are studying the Chinese model of JSSF. They find it more useful. Third is we need to have joint structure for technology infusion, communications, network, info warfare, intelligence sharing, ISR. These are all gray zone warfare areas. China has mastered the art of gray zone, converting anything and everything as a weapon. This is a future challenge. Our reorganization need to cater for this. Fourth, on my priority list is joint structure for logistics, training, maintenance, repair. These are the money saving and efficient way of working. We have progress, but at a very, very slow pace. Admiral Sinha will also saying that when he was there, these things were going on, but it is moving at a very, very slow pace. Next, we need to, in parallel, while all this is going on, we need to take a leaf from Chinese example of military-civil fusion. Under 6 headings, whatever happens in military, it happens in civil. Whatever happens in civil happens in military. As far as skill training is concerned, infrastructure is concerned. There are 6 verticals. We need to do that. Whole of government approach, which we talk about. Synergy between everyone. Technology infusion. Okay. So 6th, then it comes to theater command. As and when in future, when we have the time, we have economies done well, we have adequate assets, and our aspirations are expeditionary. That is when theater, and to my mind, whole of landmass should be one theater, then going to maybe Indian Ocean region as second theater and going beyond, depending on our capabilities and so. And AD command, to my mind, is absolutely no. There are various reasons for this. It's a topic in itself. It will never work. So with that, I have finished, sir. And thank you for patient hearing and looking forward to the interactive question and answer sessions.
Thank you, Air Marshal Khosla. I think he has made important points, and the theme that I understand that this is not the time that we have reached to make these theater commands, and he has given certain reasons for it, and also to take a very serious look at the Chinese model and not so much the US model, I guess. There is a British model, there are so many models there, but I think my own very personal view that we should find our own model, really. Nobody should be our role model. You are your own role model, because requirements, the threats are different, the threat perception is different. And possibly, we may have the desire of being a very big world power, but, we are quite some distance away. So with that, I will just not make any comments on this. I just highlighted some of the points which Marshal Khosla has made. May I now invite General Dushyant Singh to kindly take the floor. Dushyant, all yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for...
General, should I start sharing your presentation?
Yeah, you can put it up, but now that most of the issues have been actually raised by Air Marshal Khosla. So, but in any case, I think I will go through the presentation just for setting the stage for the discussion proper, because that will give us a kind of a benchmark as to from how we have to go forward as far as integrated theater commands are concerned. First of all, at the outset, thank you very much, Khosla sir, for bringing out a number of issues which are actually doing the rounds, not from now, but from I think the last 30 years since I have been involved in the construction of theater command or evolution of theater commands. In fact, the first time this idea came in kind of an active proposition was by Admiral Arun Prakash. You can go ahead. I mean, I'll tell you when to go. By Admiral Arun Prakash in 2006, when he came to the CDM, and I was the DS Squad at that time, and he said there is a need for us to do a study on how to get integrated theater commands. It was led by me, and we had Raj Shukla. We were all colonels at that point in time, and we had some group captains and also captains of the Navy as part of this forum, which went on for the study. And if Admiral Sinha knows about it, the study is actually has become the mother of all the studies for all future iterations which have taken place as far as integrated theater command is concerned. I'm not saying that everything was right or wrong, but I think we need to realize this issue that in our country too, there have been a number of studies. I can start from 1975 onwards, when Subramaniam was actually tasked after the 1971 war to carry out a study on integrating the three services. That study bit the dust, and thereafter it was in Kargil that the next study started. And after Kargil, there have been a number of service level studies, both by the Air Force, Army, and the Navy. At least I am aware of the Army. I have been myself involved in about 4 or 5 studies, right from my colonel days till I was the Chief of Staff of Eastern Command, and when I was presenting a thing for this theater command. Anyway, that is as far as the studies are concerned. So we have traveled a lot as far as journey of integrated theater commands is concerned. That was my first slide, that the journey has not been a very recent one. It has been from 1975 onward, and it is still carrying on. When will the time come is the question we have to ask us. Will it never come? Or let's start working towards it. Let's start thinking and start changing. I'm not saying change overnight, but we have to start moving towards it. Unless and until we do that, I don't think we are going to proceed ahead. Individual services will never allow a theater command to flourish. What has happened to Andaman Nicobar Command? Andaman Nicobar Command is actually a powerless command which does not have the resources, which does not have. In fact, that's a. I ask any of these Simcans, although Admiral Sinha has won that her hat, but there are a number of examples where people have been very desperate as far as the Andaman Nicobar Command is concerned. A Dornier aircraft coming from the Air Force and a Dornier aircraft coming from the other services have got a different line of maintenance. Why can't it be done there? Of course, there were some arrangements done, and thereafter some things are being done. What I'm trying to say is, we should not wait for if it isn't broken, why change it? Let's start thinking futuristic. And this slide is basically about futures. We have threats, that is a given. I think the maximum number of threats which any country has, India tops that list. China, of course, now has created a 4th front for itself, but even India has almost 3 fronts which it has to take care of. But then there are expanding interests also. Whether you look westwards, or whether you look towards the maritime domain, or whether you look eastwards towards South China Sea and Pacific Islands also. So unless we start orienting our armed forces towards that direction, we will not actually be ready by the time we have to think of these things. Okay, it does not always mean that we have to do only conflict operations. There are a number of other operations which we are doing, which need a tri-service approach. Otherwise, it becomes a single service action, and ultimately there are some shortcomings or the other. We have a minister going to coordinate certain things like this. Why? We have the organization with us. He should go there and coordinate. If there has to be some evacuation out of Ukraine, or if it has to be a evacuation out of the Gulf countries, or many other examples of such nature. Next, let's come to the future warfare. The future warfare, all of us are agreeing it is technology-based, technology-driven, whether it is the 6th generation warfare or the 7th generation warfare. In 6th generation warfare, we are looking at everything automated. If everything is going to be automated, there are so many issues which need to be integrated. I'm not saying that change over to theater commands all in one go, but start doing it is my line of argument. If you look at the 7th generation, which probably may be a much later on aspect where human decision making may also get replaced by our. Can I move the slide myself? I think Rishi.
Thank you, sir. You then have to, I'll stop sharing the screen. Then you will have to share the screen yourself.
No,
And
no,
then,
no. You do that. I'll just tell you to go next. Don't do it on
okay,
your.
okay, done, sir. Done.
Right. Okay. On certain issues, I want people to see it. Okay. Can you put it back again?
Signature, sir.
Yeah. So as far as future is concerned, the warfare is changing. I am reading a book out here, and this is the bestseller today in the world. And it is talking of warfare having changed, not changing. The conventional war have had a very short history. We are looking at more of hybrid warfare. We are looking at more of gray zone warfare, and this has been told by even Air Marshal Khosla. So therefore, our systems have to orientate towards it. Just by announcing that we will have a national cyber task force, it is not going to come through. So therefore, we have to start working on it. Let's go to the next one here, Rishi. Next. Yeah. Why I want again to tell you all about the foreign commands is concerned, just to refresh. Everybody is aware of the model which the US has got. It has got the geographical command and it got functional command. Although it is also looking at the Chinese model for the SSF model, which Air Marshal Khosla mentioned. It is definitely not suited for us. We are not that resource rich. Obviously, we cannot ape this model. This model just indicates to us that we have to move towards jointness and integration. If we take this much from it, I think that's good enough. Next. Go next. I think it is self-explanatory. I'm not going to spend time on this. Look at the Australian model. They have jointness right across, but then they have what? A single theater, as you call it. There is a CDF, there is a VCDF, Deputy Chief of Joint Operations, and then they have various components which are maritime, land component, air component. They have done this because their armed forces are very small, 60,330 people all total. Obviously, this model suits them, and they are actually practicing. They are in a island kind of a environment. Their threats are of that nature. In any case, they are going to be subordinate to the US forces whenever anything happens in this particular part of the world. Go to the next one. UK again is a subordinate service today. If I have to call it, as part of the NATO. Wherever it gets deployed, UK is given one particular area or one particular sector to defend. Whether you take Afghanistan or whether you take any of the wars which the US has been fighting. So they are also around 72,000. They also have a totally joint structure right from top to bottom, including I have visited one of their the cyber headquarters. It's totally civil military fusion. In their case, the hierarchy of higher defense organization is that you may have a boss who's from the military and his boss may be from the civil, and vice versa. That is the kind of fusion which they have created amongst themselves. And being a small defense forces, I think they are able to manage it. In our case, we have a very typical bureaucracy which doesn't want to get integrated with the defense forces. This problem is known to all of us. We have some model which we are trying to evolve. The CDS model got handicapped by making him the DMA, but if you really go deep into it, I think he has been given the financial part so that he's independent of the hierarchy for certain functions at least. And a lot of activities the CDS is today doing, which actually were the functions of the defense ministry, and where people used to actually suffer a lot. Most of the issues have been speeded up because of the this changeover of CDS and also DMA. So something positive has occurred. Unfortunately, everything is being driven from top. From the bottom, what we find is whenever we do a study. When I was doing the study, I took my students. I mean, all four of them, Air Force, Army, Navy, and one from the and myself. I asked the Chief of Army Staff at that point in time, and I said, "Sir, what is the issue which is bugging you? Why don't you want to integrate in the Eastern theater?" He says, "Navy wala CI operations कैसे करेगा? उसने देखा है क्या कभी? Three-headed Brahma is doing well. Why do you want to change it? We are talking of civil military fusion. We can't fuse amongst ourselves. Why can't we have trust with the Navy, with the Air Force, and with the Army? We have the components under them. They will be able to advise him. And ultimately, when you talk of the higher level integrations, it is the joint planning which makes the most difference. In all the wars, whether it is 62, Kargil also, why did the Air Force enter late? It's because we never think. Army ne jaisi dekha ye problem, and they straight away went into the into a war mode, forgetting that there is a service called Air Force which needs to be exploited in this kind of a scenario. We didn't do it. We're talking of the Chinese example. Please go ahead. Yeah, we are talking of the Chinese example. Now, this slide may not be seen to all of you, but this is a comparison of what they were before and what they are now. They have integrated right from top up to bottom. Earlier, they had the same headquarters doing the ground forces job also, the GS department. Now, the ground forces have been separated. There are, in fact, 7 departments right at the top. Central, and they have a proper hierarchy: CMC, PLA, and then PLA, Air Force, Army, Navy. And under the Navy, they're also raising the Marines. The Chinese are also landlocked. I agree that a lot of it is also to control or rule the country. But let me tell you, the eastern part of China is all Han. They really don't have the problems there. They have the problems in the West. And in the West, they have left the Western Theater Command independent of ruling part, because they still maintain the military district. They still maintain the forces under them. So it is the military districts and the PAP which are actually doing the ruling part of the thing. Otherwise, Western Theater Command is all focused towards the India and the other countries which it is facing. Obviously, you may say that there are 12 countries, but their primary focus is against India. We all know who is their major adversary. So all their I'm not saying everything is right with the Chinese. I can quote, there are 10 mistakes which they have done in their transformation to joint theater commands. And I have a separate discussion on that issue. Their method of implementation has been transformative. Overnight, they have changed almost everything. I think that is the wrong way to go. We need to go progressively. I think we need to go pilot project wise. That is what is important. Can you go to the next one, please? These are the list of resources which they have got, both for the Air Force, for the ground forces, and for the air, and next one is for the Navy. They have far more resources than us, and therefore they can afford to allocate resources to each theater and also maintain a strategic reserve, which is their central theater or central command, which maintains the reserve. So I agree that resource-wise, we are still a poor country as compared to our adversary China. So we can't really ape that model directly. Next. Yeah, this is also the same thing. Next. My final argument is, why change? Expanding interests, integrated battlefields of tomorrow, economy of scales, capability to conduct joint and later on integrated operations. To that extent, I agree with Air Marshal Anil Khosla that it has to be a progressive integration. मैं बोलता हूँ, शुरू करिए. Start the process. Don't keep waiting for starting it. Enhance the civil military fusion for a whole of a nation approach. This is at the top level. The government of India will have to intervene to do any kind of a civil military fusion, which they are doing. At least they have started the process. Today, the CDS is doing a lot of civil military coordination, which was not there earlier. We have made a forward movement. In a similar manner, I think we also need to move forward slowly. The question is, if 7 commands of the Air Force can switch forces amongst themselves through their DG Air Ops, why can't a joint DG Air Ops do the same? Joint DG operations do the same thing. Joint services DG Ops do the same thing. The planning thinking can start. Management of resources should not be linked to change of structures, is what my my humble submission to this audiences. Expeditionary, no, I'm not saying, but we are already doing trans Indian Ocean Indian Ocean operations. If you are going up to Ukraine, if you are going beyond into the Gulf, we are already into that kind of operation. Even if you're going to the Maldives, it's a major operation. So let's start reorienting ourselves. Let's start rethinking on. Yes, you may like to do a pilot project. Fine. I fully agree with you. Don't change in a huff, because he will take advantage. Any change which is revolutionary, you will be unstable. So our change must be stable. In the sense, when we are changing, our overall response to our adversary must remain intact. Go to the next one, please. Yeah. So the challenges are higher defense organization. I fully agree with you. An integrated military domain, multi-domain military strategy has to be evolved in writing. We've not done it. We are individually issuing strategies. Joint doctrines have been issued by the headquarter ideas, but I don't think any service even looks at it. वो आती है, कबर्ड में बंद हो जाती है, because we believe in ourselves कि हम ही ठीक कर सकते हैं सब कुछ. When we talk of cross billeting, वो minimum सी cross billeting कर देते हैं. हम army वाले they will send officers into the GLO, and from the other side similar officers will come who are by and large written off. So where is the integration? I think you have to seriously work towards reaching jointness and thereafter integration. Do it that way. Shuru to kariye. That's my tagline. I firmly believe that unity of command is essential for any military operations. And that will not come till the CDS is put under, CDS starts controlling the operations if you want to achieve jointness and integration. Individual services, at the time of crisis, you will find delayed reactions. Otherwise, the NSA will start controlling you. I have seen this happening with my eyes, and I was at the receiving end by 3 services, including my service, because somebody else was doing the coordination for us, which we should have done it anyway. Span of control. How many headquarters can we control? So therefore, there is a need for amalgamation of our headquarters. We can't just continue to keep looking at posts, etc. People say that, it's not about posts. But if you ask them in the, in private, they will say, yeah, we will lose so many CNCs, we will lose so many people. And this is true. And I'm sharing my personal experiences. However diplomatic we are when we are talking in the public, unless and until we forego our own turf, we will not achieve jointness, leave aside integration. Cadre satisfaction is a major issue. That's what I was trying to say. Minimum flux during transformation, I've already said. If we have to transform, start doing slowly, start looking at theater by theater. If you don't want to change the northern theater initially, don't do it. Start doing it in the areas where the risks are minimum. So that is why people probably selected the Maritime Theater Command. The risks are minimum by any comparisons. Duplication of effort. This is, everybody says that there is a duplication of effort. But when we start doing this study, I was responsible for the study of logistics in Eastern Theater. It didn't go. Ultimately, it was all decided that nahi, sab apna karenge. We will have only warehousing at Guwahati, where something will be done. It doesn't move. It's because of, I agree there are technical problems, but why can't we have a mixed organization to look after the technical problems? Can be done. Duplication effort, and CAPF. The point was raised, by Air Marshal Khosla that CAPF के अंदर आ जाते हैं. आएंगे. Western Theatre Command में military districts are under the Western Theatre Commander. Because at the time of war, they will be required. At the time of war, Assam Rifles will be required. At the time of war, ITBP will be required to be under us. We forget them. We don't employ them. उनको भूल जाते हैं. I was the corps commander of 11 Corps. In my area, there were 76 regular companies and 78 BSF companies. And in the name of integration, nil. because they have their own theater, they have their own command chain, which goes through MHA. So it's not only about the Air Force, it is not only about the Navy, it is about all other aspects which are there in integration, which we are lacking today. Imagine my entire front is 50-50 divided between a force which I may get later, I may not get later. When I ask them ki kaun sa aayega, kahan se aayega, you don't worry, they will come. And if at that time, if at that point in time they are employed in some kind of a IS duty in some sector, I'll keep waiting for them. Okay, training. I think that is the easiest to integrate. My own experience, higher command. I made a case, full case, that I said that the army has the resource, the Army War College has the resources, the billets, the accommodation. I got a 1,200 seating auditorium sanctioned and commenced the work within 1.5 years of my tenure there. It must be now almost getting ready. Let's do it. That's the easiest thing to do. Why have we forgotten that after NDA we can't do the joint training? We go into the staff college. I did staff college. Each of them were having their own separate wings. We rarely met, once in a while, together as a joint division. Rarely. I will get some additional knowledge. If we can't do cross billeting, at least start doing integrations at these places. Nothing will be lost. The least risk areas are training integration. Anyway, next. So our process, which I feel is, we need to develop an integrated tri-service strategy, decide the capabilities which we need, then start looking at the capability development, start creating the structures as we start getting the capabilities in place, deploy and validate in a pilot project process. A route should be a pilot project or transformative. I leave it to the audience. I feel it should be a pilot project based, because otherwise we may be caught off balance by our adversaries. So therefore we have to be careful on that one. Next. So this is one example which I gave in this. What I'm trying to only say, the only change which I'm making, this is floating all over the country. The CDS must get the operational control. The unity of command has to be with the CDS if we want everything to go joint. That's the change which I am trying to highlight here. Next. And this is one model. There are 3-4 such models which are doing the round. From what I started in 2006 to what it is today, there is a Jameen Asman ka farak. We have come down to 3. At that point in time, I was trying to adjust every CNC, all 21 of them at that point. In 2007, there were 21 of them. So I was trying to adjust that they don't lose their positions. That was the kind of resistance I was getting. And I'm not talking of interaction with colonels and brigadiers. I had a meeting with the chiefs, all 3 chiefs. So the journey has been rocky, rough, and very turbulent. We need to calm the passions. We need to go systematically. We need to see and implement it now. It's now no more a choice for us. Now we have to start moving towards it. And the best way I thought was start doing it in a logical manner, create a tri-service strategy, create a capability development plan, and then start working at creating the gaps in the capabilities, which we already have the capabilities. We need to develop the additional capabilities. And I'm once again saying the future wars are not going to be only conventional. They will be heavily, in fact, there are people who say it will be 4:1. That is 4 times, I mean, 4 parts would be non-conventional and 1 part would be conventional. You take the Ukraine example, you take the Iraq example, you take the Afghanistan example, you take the Vietnam example. I can start quoting every war. Conventional wars are there, they're going to exist. They are the backup, they are the security for your deterrence. But our capabilities have to be developed for all forms of war. And in that hybrid information, cyber, they are the future. And if we don't have the structures for them, I'm sorry, we will face grief. One structure which is there coherently, which we can say that yes, it is looking at least the Chinese have started thinking. They may not be good. I mean, all of them may not be very effective, but they've started thinking in that line that we need a support services functional command. Let's start doing it. Let it get a try service validity. Start doing with that. Forget the theater command. Or they are also calling it as fronts now. Now it is theater fronts, because based on the threat they are creating the theater, or based on your interest. Let's begin. That's my end of the talk. Let's start with what we can achieve. Rest will follow. I've finished, sir.
Okay, thank you, General Dushyant. You can take away the slide from the screen. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Both the panelists have made some very sane suggestions, and I'm glad that there is a unity of thought that we should be moving towards it. And how do we move is what in the time frame and the manner both have been discussed quite well. And I think that there is very little difference as far as the thought process is concerned. It is not that do we do it or not. Idea is to when do we complete it. That is the direction that we are moving in. I just want to make few points, not really a question, but few points. General Dushyant is quite right that there has to be a what is called a test case, see how it works. And I believe that the Southwestern Command at Jaipur has been tasked with this test case already.
Yes,
and gradually the things will move, and they will actually see it practically on ground. How does it function? For at least a year before they formalize this whole thing. The second thing, as far as the joint training is concerned, I believe there is some movement in the direction of what General Dushyant mentioned, that you have a joint service war college, so that you don't have 3 different war colleges, and devise the syllabuses there are groups who are already doing this. Another integration good point that there are officers at the level of Major General equivalent, Brigadier equivalent, Colonel equivalent, who have been chosen, and they are now being gradually posted to inter-service sort of changing their service and going into different headquarters in all arms of the service, not only logistics, but they're also going into the warfare section, the infantry, the land battle, the artillery, etc., etc. And they will form the backbone of future theater commands or joint commands, whatever the name it is going to take. And they will be posted there in key positions so that they understand the nuances of the warfare as the other 2 services thing, so that there is complete unison. I completely agree with Air Marshal Khosla that our assets are not enough, and therefore dividing the air power at this point in time may not be a good idea. And I think that point has been taken by the government and the CDS, and it is not going to be so to start with till such time we have enough assets. But at some point in time, I guess that it will happen. So as I always keep saying that in this case you should be hurry up slowly and don't hurry up very quickly. So hurry up slowly is the key to this. Another point I wanted to make is the important point. There's something which should have been done. I don't know why it has not been done. Why has the capital acquisition left with the Department of Defense and not with the DMA?
Yeah.
Department of Defense, what I mean is it means they're headed by the Defense Secretary and DMA. And let me also apprise, if my very distinguished colleagues don't know, that at DMA it was not asked by the services; it has been given. I had a long chat with late General Rawat. Very kind of him that he used to often call me up and call me to his house and discuss few things. I didn't know him very well when I was CISC. I think he may have been a brigadier I think he had just become brigadier. He was in one of the committees where he used to come, and that was my interaction. But very great of him to, look at retired people. And he had mentioned that when the final chart came, which was to approve by the cabinet, he saw this DMA. He got really very wild, and he went running to call on the Prime Minister. That said, "Ye aapne kya kar diya? What have you given me?" Prime Minister, it is his thought. He mentioned, "General Sahab, जब तक आप ये ब्यूरोक्रेसी के बीच में अपना पैर नहीं जमाएंगे, आपकी बात कोई नहीं सुनेगा। आपको मुझे बोलना ही पड़ेगा कि आपके यहाँ सेक्रेटरी है, आपको ACC से उसी तरह से पैनलमेंट वगैरह होगी। आपका क्षेत्र जो है आपके द्वारा होना चाहिए, लेकिन वो सरकार का अभिन्न अंग तभी होगा जबकि गिवन स्ट्रक्चर है उसमें आप आ जाएंगे।" तो I thought, though it is, I have my views as to why it should not be headed by CDS but by CISC. But that will come later, I guess. This was basically to, set the pace. That yes, there is DMA, there is a secretary DMA. He's senior to the defense secretary in protocol, in hierarchy, and therefore he carries a lot of weight. And he does carry a lot of weight within the Ministry of Defense. So I think that these are few things I thought I'll share. Some of you may be knowing, many of you may be knowing, because I retired 9 years, 10 years ago now. You people are more current than I am. So what I'll do is I will just, and I've noted down a lot of points wherever there is a issue in question answer period. If there is a need for me to intervene, I will. But now what I'll do is I will request Group Captain Mehta to kindly just take the questions 2-3 at a time, and then let me know. I can, as you keep reading the questions, I will. But I suggest that you take 2 or 3 questions at one time, so that both our distinguished speakers have at least 2 questions to address at one time. Otherwise, it will become sort of endless. So with that, and thank you both my speakers, really, really very well. And I'm glad that we are in agreement with everything that has been said. Nobody is opposing any aspect which has been, the bigger aspect which has been put across. We're all in agreement. And in fact, that is one great sense of integration that I can see here on the panel. And 5-6 years back, when I participated in the panel or while in service, my God, even in the Chiefs of Staff Committee, there used to be battle. As CISC had very difficult time to, sort of try to douse that, because I was the only purple guy. Rest everybody didn't want to be purple. So it was quite a tough task. We have gone through it. But I think, of course, Marshal Khosla has been in the Vice Chiefs Committee. He would have attended a number of these meetings. He will probably have the latest. But this is the difficulty. This is the process which you have already gone through. That's why I'm sharing these incidents. It's not that we haven't gone through. We have gone through these aches and pains. And now where we are right now, we are at a stage where people from senior officers from 3 services are saying that, yes, all of it is right, but let's begin. So that is where we are. So, Group Captain Mehta, kindly.
I would request General Anil Kapoor, who raised the hand, to put across his words.
General Anil Kapoor, sir, please put on your camera.
Okay, I'm actually traveling, but I'll switch it on, not a problem. Okay, firstly, a great presentation, and very pertinent points have come up and very nicely highlighted by Shekhar also. Just 2-3 comments I've got, and maybe one could expect a response from both the speakers or either of them. Now, my first point is that actually true integration is technology following a common technology code. And when I say technology code, it is a common ICT code, Information Communication Technology. And I speak out of my experience as DGIS. There's a huge amount of trust deficit in managing our networks.
Yeah.
Number one, communication problems. Air Force feels they are more secure than the Army and vice versa. But that is one issue. The other is, when we look at it from an operational perspective, and true integration is when we look at it from an operational perspective, where is the common operating picture? Where is the real-time situational awareness? I mean, in fact, I was engaging as a DGIS with AOCNC Western Command, and we would discuss how do you get the FLOT. And I went up to the CISC that let's do a common DGIS program, common information system program. And we thought the low-hanging fruit was to get the air defense organized first. So we said, you have a IACCS, let's integrate IACCS. And over a period of time, initially there was a lot of agreements, but after my retirement, I've seen that we are back to Army doing their own and Air Force obviously doing their own. So really, my first point is that we have to look at the ICT interface as the first requirement, with a common operating picture and real-time situational awareness as being two strategic requirements, irrespective of the theater, irrespective of Indian Ocean, irrespective of everywhere. I think that will happen only when we look at it from this perspective. That is one. Second is that there are some low-hanging fruits really in integration. Let's look at our Herons and Searchers, the UAV SS. Today, the Air Force and the Army in most of the stations actually use the same, but they have a separate AMC. I'm giving you the real picture. Air Force does their own AMC with IAI Malad, and Army does their own. And those guys are bleeding us away, charging huge amount of money. You know, I mean, it started at 13 lakh per day when it started, became 26 after 5 years. Today it is close to 80 lakhs per day we are paying for AMC, and each service is paying a different amount per day. So I feel there is huge amount of expertise. We are flying from almost the same stations. Why not integrate there? Where is the problem? I mean, just by a general going and becoming an air vice marshal and vice versa, I don't think those are semantics, and we should get out of them. Because I feel that a guy who's grown in the Air Force understands it very well. Suddenly by becoming a general and putting on an avian's dress, it is not a medical corps, please. Let's not treat it like a medical corps. There is a huge amount of specialization in each of these services, and it needs to be respected. But where we can integrate, and we should learn out of the private sector. Look at Google. Look at Amazon. They run international business through a data set which is handled globally. I mean, and all through the power of ICT. So I would feel that, you know, if we were to start somewhere, maybe let us look at places where we have common equipment. Helicopters is one. We have UAVs is the other. Let's start there. And I agree with Jal Dushyant. Let's do a pilot in these and see where do we stand, and then slowly build the tri-service ICT infrastructure, tri-service cyber infrastructure. Let's look at common communication and information systems, decision support systems. Let the Western Army Commander see what the Western Army Air Command is doing, and vice versa. Where is the FLOT, if I may say, in war? I mean, there are so many such things which will actually become very easy if we start integrating at the right place and use the power of technology. I think what we are doing today, it's not a high command course or a staff college where, you know, people sit in the same headquarters and discuss and plan. Well, I'm not saying that is not important, but I think that may not be the right approach. To my mind, the right approach is, let's look at some brass tacks. Let's look at, I mean, targeting is common. The UAVs are doing the common job. Why not integrate there? Why not look at the maintenance, common flying, common maintenance contracts, and maybe start integration there. Look at helicopters. They fly from the same base, but they have entirely different organizations. Same equipment, same everything, same AOR. But why? So I would go by that thought. Thank you, but I would definitely love to listen to a counter view if there is, to educate myself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Second question. Captain Mehta, are you ready?
Ashutosh has raised his hand, so
Yeah.
Ashutosh.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So first thing is actually I had a different question, but one point I just wanted to highlight what General Kapoor just now mentioned about having a common system for the equipment or the assets that both Army and Air Force have. I remember in my younger days as pilot officer or flying officer, there used to be AeroP units co-located with Air Force stations. And there were engineering officers and airmen of Air Force which used to maintain those helicopters. They used to help with maintenance. Now, gradually what happened was those units got relocated to different stations in army units, and the airmen and officers of Air Force were replaced by army jawans who were trained at Air Force Technical College, Bangalore, and similarly helicopter training centers. So what I'm doing, what I want to highlight is something which had been there in the past. We had undone it, and now we are talking of reintegration. So that is one point worth noting. I just wanted to make this point, but my question is different. My question is on theaterization in the realm of cyber and space commands.
Yeah.
Like cyber and space integration. There are many other players like civil and private players. There are PSUs which have a very, very major threat. Those things are real and imminent. In fact, some of it was mentioned by General Dushyant when he was talking of the US Defense Services. So I would request any of the panelists to dwell upon these, that how can we start working on these areas, because they are extremely important.
Okay, thank you, Ashutosh. I think we have two questions. As far as General Kapoor's questions are concerned, there are more suggestions in that because will be difficult to defend against it because it is all correct. So it's more like a suggestion. But however, what I'll do is I will ask, since it is more to do with the integrated domain picture or integrated picture of the theater, I will request first Air Marshal Khosla to make as to where we are, or does he have any knowledge on where we are going, and maybe simultaneously he can address the question of Ashutosh. Though answer may be quite simple because that was the time of segregation, but now it is time for integration.
Aggregation.
Army wanted to do its own, and therefore the Air Force said fine. In fact, Air Force was initially quite reluctant to give it. He said, come on, we know aircraft maintenance better than you do. In fact, just to put a point, that Navy's lot of maintenance of aircraft is done by the BRDs. Many of them, in fact, all the Dorniers are repaired at. We don't have a third line servicing as far as any aircraft is concerned, including the helicopters. They're all done by either by HL or by BRD. So we have a system, and Army wanted to have it separately. So anyway, having said that, Air Marshal Khosla, may I request you to give your views on that?
Yeah, so going by General Kapoor's ideas, I fully agree with him. But only one or two points I want to tell that, the composite air picture, the Air Force has gone into network centricity in a big way, sir. The three layers which are there, and with this software-defined radio coming, the third layer, which was between the platforms which are airborne, that has also been completed. Now, coming to General's point, the composite air picture, sir, if you remember, Admiral, when you were in Western Naval Command, in the ops room, that composite air picture was available on the display. And whenever wanted, it used to be put on the main LCD.
Absolutely.
In all the topics exercises, these pictures were available.
Yeah.
Similarly, these pictures are available at all the joint structures of the Army, Air Force, wherever the FNET is available. And these have been extended to the joint ops rooms, and they are available on whenever required. So that is one. Secondly, before retirement, one of the last exercises, the integration between the IACCS and the, I'll say, FNET and the Army equivalent was carried out, and it was demonstrated in that exercise. Even when the firing of BrahMos takes place in Andaman Nicobar Command, that picture is projected and shown at wherever Army wants to see it. That extent. But that is not the end. We need to move way ahead, like the General said. We need to move way ahead. For a case in point, DCN. We have a DCN, sir, Defense Communication Network, which is a tri-service this thing. It's a white elephant lying there. I tried my best, but it didn't move. It is just lying there with those computers, very advanced systems where you can have a video call on a press notice. But what is going to move from one to the other is not. It's like, it's like a communication highway. But what trucks will move onto it and what do the trucks contain is not this thing. So what apps are going to be employed on it? What information sharing needs to be done? Nothing. But the network is available at various places. So we need to move much ahead. I agree with the general on that point. But whatever you pointed out, some of the things I think we have moved ahead in the thing. Now coming to the second part, example of AOP, it was a process of holding hand. See, what happens is, as I said, each service should have an air arm of their own, and those assets should be employed as per the philosophy of the operations of that individual service. Now, these helicopters, AOP, were particularly required for some specific purposes of, artillery and as observation post. And the initial portion was, holding hand. Similarly, a lot of cases happen in this where, like even Navy, with the Navy, we used to train. The Navy went separately for their training, then they came back. All that happened. So what I'm trying to get at is that AOP process was like holding hand and making them capable so that they can do their own maintenance, they can run their own helicopters from the their own bases, and that's what they wanted, and then they moved forward. Anyway, we'll not spend more time on it. As far as theaterization, like cyber and space, very good point you brought out, that civil also needs to be integrated. My idea is that we need to do two things in as far as cyberspace, like including maybe info and electronic warfare. We need to have a three-layer structure. One is, each service having their whatever capabilities required, service specific. The second layer needs to be tri-service at the headquarter IDS level, this thing. And third needs to be where we can integrate with the other agencies. It's not only cyber attack, will not only be on the defense services, it can be on any of the sector, banking sector, railway sector, any sector, So national level, we need to have an integration. Second thing, what we need to have is a combined sort of ops rooms with the concept of, scanning all the media, all the domains 24/7 and seeing what is going on, and a sort of a QRT concept for a quick reaction. And another wing, which is R&D wing, which keeps track of what are the new threats developing, new developments taking place, which are the problem areas coming up, and being proactive. And this also needs to be at the three levels, that is individual service level, combined service level, and at the national level. That is my recommendation as far as this dealing with these threats are concerned. So.
Okay, thank you. General Dushyant, would you like to make some comments on this?
Quick comment, sir. I'm not going to take more time because whatever points Kapoor has raised, they are perfectly, in fact, logical. I mentioned this for the Dornier case. There are a number of other cases also where this kind of a disparity was there. This needs to be integrated. Therefore, the logistics was one area where we could have found a meeting ground for joint structures. That is one. And earlier we do it, the better it is for us. As far as the networks are concerned, this is a real problem. About the DCN, what Air Marshal Anil Khoshla mentioned, I had a DCN in my office. I would be half the time not available. And when I am available and I want to contact the counterpart in Shillong, he was at that time in Shillong. We were both, he was SASO and I was the chief of staff. Invariably, we are not available. And why this problem comes up is because we do not have a joint operations headquarters at the tri-service level. There has to be a tri-service merging right from top down. People will start manning these operations room, and then only you will find a real-time picture coming. Giving it to a commander has got no meaning. A commander is a guy who's going in the field. He's going around. He has to, galvanize his command. Whereas the staff structures have to be joint and integrated, which is not happening. In my headquarters in Calcutta, the advanced air headquarters was separately located. There was no talking between the advanced headquarters and the army ops room or command ops room. These integrations, unless they take place, they start sitting at the same place. we will not have this common picture coming up. And we will, even if we integrate the networks, where are the people? Networks integrated with structures is what going to work. That's the final comment I want to give. AROP was a clear case of mistrust. The army kept thinking, army did not have a trust on the Air Force. There was a trust deficit which was existing at that point in time. So a decision was taken, okay, we want to have a thing. And maybe there was some fault from either side. I was a young officer when these kind of debates used to go in the army. So I would not be aware of the higher picture at that point. But in my view, it was trust deficit between the two, which was a major reason. And army felt that they are not getting the things at the right time, at the right place. So,
Dushyanth, is it trust or is it under command syndrome?
You can call it anyway. But I think there was a mixture of both. Trust was also there. I mean, trust was also one. Attack heptas ki bhi wahi kahani hai. Initially, the attack heptas were with the Air Force. Then, the chief started talking, the army must have a separate attack heptas squadron, etc. It is still going on. So I agree with the point that the army must have a separate aviation wing or air wing. Only thing is resources is the constraint, which I fully agree with you. As and when the resources are built, they should start moving towards that direction.
Deepak Bhatia has raised the hand.
Yeah, before I invite Deepak, I'll just give me a minute before I forget, because I might forget the relevant point. It is quite right, what I've been said, but General Kapoor, as far as the integrated picture is concerned, because we didn't have a CDS and IDS headquarters was headed by Lieutenant General Army Commander Equivalent Officer, we did start in a small way the integrated national command post, INCP as we called it, and we had the pictures of all three services. It was being manned by 24/7 by the 3 service representatives who were posted in IDS headquarters. And whenever an activity would take place where an action was, it was mainly done for the disaster management, because armed forces were the first responders at that time. NDMA had not come into being. It was just about to be coming into the service. And full activation used to be done only when there was a requirement. In that case, the ACAS Ops, the CNS Ops and DGMO office, they would send a senior guy of the level of full colonel or a brigadier who would actually sit there, and they will start manning the communication to their own service headquarters. So there was an attempt made, but let me also tell you that the National Command Post is becoming operational in Manesar, and I think that all services pictures will be available. But it is a tall task, because what Air Marshal Khosla just brought out, technology and the manner in which it has already spread, and it is right now, Air Force's AFNET is way ahead of the other two services really. But maritime domain awareness is also available in very close vicinity, and I think that entire picture will go to the National Command Post. And that is what. The second point which Marshal Khosla made a point regarding the cyber. There are 2 models which one can look at. One is the National Cyber Command in South Korea. The National Cyber Command is headed alternately by a civil gentleman and armed forces gentleman. And all those 3 layers are actually part of the National Cyber Command, because there requires to be some continuity. For example, I can share with all you guys, we started off as far as the cyber activities are concerned, I can just say in very mild terms, IDS headquarters and, the NTRO. We have a committee, we have all the sort of basic structures in place, where we said, okay, fine, we will both keep looking at it together. And once we come to a, roundabout where we find that it is actually heading towards the civil infrastructure, as pointed out by Air Marshal Khosla, we tell NTRO, ye tumhara hai, tum isko handle karo. So, we came on a roundabout, and if NTRO saw that, something which is heading towards the armed forces type, then he said that, he will tell the IDS headquarters, because as you know that we have this shady organization called Daira, which does anything other than Daira. So anyway, I leave that aside. So we did a lot of work together, and I hope that is still going on, because we got the structures, institutionalization of that done, including the the CCS approval to do that. But anyway, that apart. So I think there is possibly one, Indian government or the armed forces should look at the National Cyber Command, and that could actually solve all the purpose and reduce the manpower and assets which are required to do. And mind you, that these are the commands which will actually start the warfare or will be the first line of war.
Yes.
The cyber command, the info warfare, which Marshal Khosla and both Dushyant also mentioned this, and ultimately going into the other types of warfare. In fact, the covert attacks will probably start, and now the artificial intelligence that is going to play a very big role. UAVs combined, I fully agree, it should be, because now most of the warfare, no contact warfare, as people are saying, it should start. Contact warfare should be the last resort, actually, where you want to, give a human life. I mean, air warfare is actually speaking is a no contact warfare, really. I mean, if everything is safe and sound, it becomes a contact warfare only when some mishap takes place. So I think that there is a lot of merit in every point which has been made. I'll stop there. Let me invite Deepak. Can you please tell your point?
Yes, sir. So my observations and questions emanate from the comments of General Dushyant Singh. The first one was about that the CDS model has been handicapped by Secretary DMA. I think, sir, is that Secretary DMA and the formulation of DMA and inclusion of armed forces personnel in Department of MOD is the most far-reaching reform which has been done. And as Admiral Sinha mentioned, I think that is the way, unless we ourselves deter it away, sir. Second observation, sir, was about your comments on that China is landlocked, and the maritime theater is the one with lesser threat, and that is where we can experiment on. I think no longer, sir, because China has broken those barriers, and if I dare say, China is now our maritime neighbor, sir. And there is no doubt about it. From 2008 onwards, their presence has only increased. And I can very confidently say now that they are our maritime neighbor, and we'll be dealing with them in that manner in the next. Question specific to you, sir, is when you mentioned whether when we go towards theaterization, should we take a pilot project route or a transformative route? Sir, isn't ANC, the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which was set up in 2001, a good pilot project in itself in 20 years that it has been there? And I think it has a lot of lessons for us to give if we look into it, both what we should do and what we should not do. And if we look at it deeply, we should be able to derive a lot of things when we go into the theaterization process, sir. Your comments on that, sir. My second question, sir, is to Air Marshal Khosla. And again, it is from the remarks of General Dushyant when you had mentioned that 7 commands of Air Force can change resources. Why can't a joint DG Air Ops do it, sir? Sir, Air Marshal Khosla, if you could cover that point, because what is often the Air Force stand about opposition to theaterization is that there will be distribution of resources which will happen. And General Dushyant Singh brought out very clearly that it is already happening. So why can't it be done under a joint DG Air Ops and in an integrated theater model? Thank you very much.
I'll take on the first question because I have to leave, sir. So I'll request the chair if he can permit me to leave. There is some major commitment for which I have to go. First of all, Commander Bhatt, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. So first of all, Commander Bhatia, thank you very much for your observation and good observation. First of all, I'll first answer the question. Regarding ANC being a pilot project, I fully agree with you. It was meant to be a pilot project. But, really speaking, it did not achieve the desired results because of the resources which were not being given to the ANC for various reasons. I will not go into the Navy or the Air Force, what they gave or what they didn't give. I will only go into the Army part of it. There was 108 Brigade which was allotted to it. 108 Brigade, it was -1 battalion. Out of that also, on every exercise, that brigade was pulled out from there. If anything happens in the Andaman Nicobar Island groups, it's a very large area. I mean, you will agree with me that it's quite a group of islands there. It needs certain amount of ab initio resources to respond, both from the Air Force and the Navy. I'm not saying give them the whole hog, but just by keeping some dorniers, I don't think you're going to achieve much. At least start doing a little more than what it was required. It was kept as a pilot project only. There was no, I don't think there was any major forward movement which took place. Major pilot project lessons will be learned where there is a real kind of an operations going on. Let's say the Eastern Theater. If you want to do some kind of a pilot project there, do it. But I would prefer it on the Western Theater because of the fact that between China and Pakistan to us is a relatively easy to manage threat in the current context. So maybe a pilot project like what Admiral Sinha suggested in the Southwestern Command would be the way to go. That will give us some major lessons as far as pilot project route is concerned. And why I prefer pilot project is it does not upset your apple cart if something happens to you from our adversaries. Most of the time, you have disturbances along the land borders. The maritime borders, we will get enough notice to mobilize things there. In any case, there are ab initio, a lot of forces available in the Southern Theater of the Army, Air Force, and the Navy to respond to the naval forces who are going to be deployed there. So, so the Southwestern Command model to me looks a better pilot project. Maybe we'll get better things from that area. So this is my response to you. Regarding your other comments, okay, I take it with that. In fact, I lost track of what you had said about the two observations which you had made, so I could respond to it. What are the two observations which you had said?
So first observation was about CDS being handicapped.
Yeah, I think that you misunderstood. What I had said was that the DMA is not a handicap thing. I said it's a progress made. Something has been done. I would have preferred if procurement, capital procurement had come under the DMA. It has not come under the DMA. I would have preferred if the operations had come under the DMA. I mean, under the CDS. That has not come through. I did not say that it was handicapped. I did not say that it was handicapped. I had said that some progress has been made, that at least the defense forces have been given entry into the Ministry of Defense to actually address a lot of issues which were taking a lot of time. Those are being solved earlier. Your promotion cases, your revenue cases, all those are being sorted out quite well. In fact, the revenue powers have been increased. So all that comes up to the DMA and it goes sanctioned thereafter. So it is a positive step, not the one I would have ideally liked.
Marshal Khosla, would you like to make some observation?
Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick, this thing. So Deepak, very good points you brought out. China being maritime neighbor, absolutely. In my mind, already the presence in the IOR is increasing by the day. The number of port visit, number of ships which are operating. That is why I said the ANC needs to be converted into steel curtain is high time. And to my mind, China, the theaters which are existing at the moment are temporary. As they build up, if they're saying the world-class military by 2049, their theaters will undergo a change like US, and they will be global. And after South China Sea, I think the next theater will be Indian Ocean region. So I fully agree with you. Number two, DMA, good or bad, Admiral Sinha brought out that DMA was never asked for. I've got only two issues with it. One is CDS should not be commanding, and sixth should be looking after this thing. How many things can he look after? Now, if you're talking about giving an operational road in theater, then how will he look after all these mundane things? Second thing is, sir, pardon my using a very crude language. but I can't think of anything better. I think all milk-giving cows have been kept with the MOD, and rest all has been given to DMA. Pardon my language. Sir.
No, that's
Okay,
that's
I have
true.
got only these 2 points to make. Okay,
That's true.
ANC Parless, Admiral Sinha has seen it from the beginning. I have seen it. Things which are moved now to ANC should have moved at least 10 to 15 years back. Due
Absolutely.
to whatever reason, no direct threat or not, but we are behind times. And unless you move them there, the sincerity doesn't come. You know that we can keep saying that if needed, they will move. So they have moved quite a bit, but then we need to go. I would say that we have gone into 3rd gear. We need to go into 4th and 5th gear. Pilot project, I absolutely agree with you. There is a need for a pilot project when the ANC is already there for how many years now, sir? 20. I'm forgetting the date, sir.
22 years.
22 years. 22 years.
23, yeah.
2002, sir.
One
So-
month short of 22
I
years.
fully agree. Okay, coming to your second question, which was directed towards me. Now, if you take the China, actually speaking, it's a, I can go on for about hours on this issue. As far as we are concerned, the future challenges, Pakistan is a irritant, China is a challenge, and the collusive threat which is there is the problem. Okay, that is my feeling. Now to deal with it, and at the moment, our resources, the fighter squadrons, are down to 30 odd squadrons. What study was done years back was 42 squadrons authorized or something. If you do a study now with the China's military power, which has gone up, and the way is boosting Pakistan also, I think the numbers will be much higher. But we can't replace them overnight. We don't have that kind of economic freedom. Plus, even if we want, we can't procure them so fast. So that is one. Even our war enablers like air-to-air refueling, AWACS, and a whole lot of other things, capability-wise, we have Indian Air Force has gone way ahead capability-wise. Capability, when I say, all-weather capability, night capability, reach, flexibility of operations, infrastructure, communications, network, these are capabilities. War waging capacity is the one thing which we are lacking, and both combined make the deterrence. So our deterrence value is not in tune at the moment with the existing challenges and the future challenges. So my point is, why I brought out this is, now Air Force always has 2 plans. One is to fight with whatever if the war is tomorrow, and second is the future trajectory, which I think all services generally do that. But what happens is now to deal with the threats with this scenario where the resources are limited, what is happening is the major thing. What is happening is the role of the air headquarters has become much more. Okay, whereas air headquarters, that another point I want to make before I proceed further is there is a philosophical difference between way of working between Army and Air Force. Air Force works onto centralized planning and decentralized execution. Army works down the line. It is delegated to, from Army headquarters to command to this thing, and down the line to battalion to platoon. You have fixed areas and you have this thing. And in that area, the commander has got freedom to work. That is how this under command syndrome also comes up. It's not a bad thing. It is required in Army way of operating. Okay. Now, why I brought out these 2 things is, now if you think what is happening is, with this limited resources, air headquarters role becomes the same. I've written a piece and it's on my blog, the strategies which we need to deal, how to deal with this sort of situation. So in these strategies, it comes out, integrated conceptualization of war, that is all services, resource allocation, follow the policy of sharing of poverty rather than distribution of riches, active monitoring, which is possible by the network environment. Why active monitoring? What I'm saying is, follow the principle of give the milk to the baby before it cries. This is not the role of the Air Force, but in the last 5 years, this is what is happening. The headquarters which is set up, the ops room is very, very elaborate with the network centricity. All the info is coming, it is analyzed, and before a situation is developing where there is a surplus on one side and there is a lack on the other side, things are transferred. There is swing force concept. You have something central. I had to have so much of problem in explaining to people that with one threat, when they're dealing with, I had given them more resources, and when they're dealing with 2 threats, I'm giving them lesser resources, because that is the way it works. So swing force concept. Okay, then there are a whole lot of strategies are there, 7, 8 of them. But the bottom line is the air headquarter role comes in a big way. Now your point is why not DG Aeros doing the same thing in a theater command? I have worked extensively with all the three services, all the three. I've done Army Higher Command. I've done with Northern Command, the most operational area. I can give you a lot of examples, which I don't want to cover here. But let me tell you, the commander doesn't want to, have the assets with him all the time. He doesn't want to share, and it will not work. I don't want to go into the examples and the whole thing. If you want, you can speak to me one-to-one. I can share with you whatever I can share. And a lot of things I've written on my blog related to this question. You can go through it. And
thank you, Master Chair. I saw IIRF wants to say something here.
Thank you, Admiral. Well, one is General Dushyant Singh has left. So the one question I wanted to know is that he talked about civil-military integration in the UK, and where there is some level of integration between a civilian bureaucrat, that's in the British context, Humphrey Appleby, and the army officer that's in the British context, General Howard, if you take a yes Prime Minister analogy. But where does the politician, where does Mr. Hacker fit into this? General Dushyant has left, so maybe we can't ask that question. I'll ask Air Marshal Khosla one question is, did he been Commander of Maritime Air Command at Mumbai? How does the air arms of the Indian Navy and the Indian Coast Guard integrate with IAF? And on the issue of creating the Department of Military Affairs, one problem is the equivalence of role. An armed forces officer reaches the same rank later in their career. So how is this to be addressed? I mean, because this imbalance is inbuilt, it's institutionally inbuilt. Institutional bias against downgrading of army ranks versus civilian ranks. So both of these questions. Thank you, sir. Chair and Air Marshal, sir. Thank you.
Should I go, sir?
Yeah, you go ahead, Al.
Yeah, okay. I suggest, sir, you take on the second question, the DMA rank equivalence, because, okay. The first one, actually, IAF or the Air Force is the linchpin for the joint operations. It operates both with Navy and both with the Army. And there is a proper structure available with both the services. I will not go into Army structure. It is up to each command has got a 2-star level officer posted to Army command. Then down the line, we have structure group captain level people operating at lower core level, and then FSCs up to lower level. So there's a structure available, communications are available. Similarly, with the Navy, headquarter maritime air operations is headed by a 2-star. That is the interface between Navy and the air operations and Air Force operations. And then there is a thing called MEF, Maritime Element of Air Force, which has got both naval element and the Air Force element, and that helps in coordinating all the air activity. Now, as far as assets are concerned, the 2-star officer is sitting in the naval ops room. He's attending all the briefings, morning, evening, whenever the fleet commander is being addressed, being briefed, or chief of staff is holding the fort, or the CNC is coming for briefing. He attends all the briefings and all the war which is being progressing, the surface operation, naval operations. He is coordinating and then getting the Air Force whatever is required. Then a lot of joint planning goes in for joint operations, like what happened in Karachi attack and all, because it can't be done singly by one service. It has to be a very detailed that planning goes on. As far as Coast Guard is concerned, basically Coast Guard roles are slightly different, but Navy and then the joint structures are available. As far as dealing with the non-war type of situations are concerned, both Navy, Coast Guard, and the Air Force, they do have they have yearly meetings, they have yearly exercises where assets are put in and these are carried out. Okay. And secondly, as far as war is concerned, the Coast Guard assets also work along with the Navy. The third or fourth point is that, there is a close coordination between Navy and the Air Force. Naval forces like air defense, when you talk, when the naval forces are away at sea, away from the shore base, range of the shore base, they look after their own integral air power, they look after the AD as well as offensive. But as they come within the range of the shore-based aircraft, Air Force also assists in giving them the overall cover. Similarly, for gunboats, when they go for attack, the cover is given. Similarly, a wax cover, if it available, air-to-air refueling is shared. As and when, if the carrier is not available, the naval assets operate from the Air Force bases along with the Air Force. So it's a close coordination is maintained between them. I think second question, so you take on. If you want, I will answer it, but
as far as the equivalence is concerned, there is the national protocol which is already laid down. And right now, the appointments are being done except for the CDS appointment. The CDS is the only one which is higher than protocol for a secretary's job. I had mentioned in the beginning that when late General Rawat, when I asked him the same question, he said, sir, this is basically to set up and get the feet of DMA into this whole bureaucracy, and gradually it will move to the CISC, will become the CISC equivalent, or whatever you call him a vice chief or defense staff. In fact, I have suggested in one of the recent writings that there should be two VCDS. One should be VCDS Ops and one should be VCDS Adam and Logistic, because the work requirement is going to become too much. If you're going to be a full joint structure, as the time passes, so VCDS Ops will actually be taking the present, DGMO, the DGNO, and DG Air Ops together, and that is how they will sit in the Ops room. And the other Adam issues and logistics issues should be looked after by the VCDS Adam, and he should also be the CISC. So that is much later, not now, as the time passes. So I think the only anomaly that I see now is at the level of CDS, because now we have additional secretary below the secretary DMA who is he is not a CNC level lieutenant general. He is a additional secretary level in that pay grade. So we have, that is also in rotation. I think right now there's a naval officer who is a vice admiral who's gone. Similarly, the joint secretary, each service, joint secretary, Navy, Army, Air Force, they are the people from their own service, and they're all 2-star officers, because as per the national protocol, the equivalence is with that of a joint secretary in the other service. Similarly, down below, there are civil service officers also posted with the DMA. So we have a armed forces boss for them. At the level of joint secretary and director, there are officers from the civil service. There used to be one IAS officer earlier, but right now I think his replacement has not been given, but it will come. There's an AFHQ cadre officers who are posted there from the civil service. So I think that, the questions are very valid, but I think it is a work in progress which has begun, and give it a little bit of time. I'm sure that, are given a challenge to the armed forces, they rise to the occasion, they will do it. So now it is thrown upon them. Ye to tumko karna hi karna hai, because it came from the Prime Minister, no other than Prime Minister. And therefore, I sense that it will work. And we are all into sort of, these are the teething troubles. We have this, little bit of aches and pains. But ultimately, we will reach, hopefully, this Atmanirbhar and self-dependence and all that will catch up. May not be right now, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years down the line. Air Force is terribly short of assets. And therefore, a lot of people were saying, why have you bought Rafale? Why not so-and-so aircraft? I said, come on. You can't really, compare apple and oranges. They both have different jobs. Though I personally feel that, this situation has come, a lot of errors have been made by all services, including the Air Force. That all aircraft has to be, heavyweight 30-ton plus, that's where I think something went wrong. We could not, if we had stuck to, lightweight, midweight, and heavyweight aircraft, then possibly our assets would not have declined so quickly. But anyway, they have done the amendment. Now the LCA is coming, and we'll have a mid sort of MMRCA type aircraft, and then you have a heavyweight aircraft already there. So I think that it's a process of learning. We will learn as long as our current situation, because we have 2 live borders. As long as our current situation is, sort of kept under control, rest of it, as the assets grow, and right in the beginning, Air Marshal Khosla said our economy, as and when we become 5 trillion economy, 10 trillion economy, I'm sure I see that, the future is going to become much better. Raj, you want to?
Thank you very much, Admiral sir. We have overshot our time by 30 minutes. And so we may not be able to take more questions now. There are so many questions there in the chat box. And so I will personally thank each one of you and request Brigadier Sandeep to give his thanking address, and then we will call it off for today.
Thank you very much, our esteemed panelist. Thank you, sir, Shekhar Sinha, sir. In fact, I remember you when I was posted there as CSO lab coming to meet us in Andamans. So I was a CSO lab, and I remember you. And thank you very much, sir. And also Air Marshal Anil Khosla for giving very, very candid, valid points. And also Dushyant, who is not here, is my regimental officer. And so that, and all the people who attended and got educated, and many things which has come out in the thing is very candid points. That is the point. That's how we are planning to have this interaction to make people aware of what exactly is happening and how it will happen and what are the issues which it has to be addressed. And I'm sure these things are going to the right places, and if they hear it or not is up to them. And that's how we plan to go ahead in our future webinars and seminars and things like that. And sirs, don't consider this as the end of it, because this is the in thing which is going to develop as things are going to come. And there are many people who are research scholars who would like to take on your experience, and we'll continue requesting you to come and address the people. And it will be on the YouTube also. And thank you very much once again, Shekhar Sinha sir, Anil Khosla sir, and Dushyant. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Before you shut down, let me just thank both my co-panelists, Air Marshal Khosla and General Dushyant, who is not here. What I like that this is the first discussion on this tri-service issue, where the sanctity has been maintained throughout, and there have been no loud voices. So I must compliment IIRF, both Brigadier Sandeep and Group Captain Mehta. In spite of our sort of variations in thought processes, variations in, but as they say, Raste anek lekin manzil ek. We are all heading in the same direction. Maybe the paths are slightly different, but they will all come together, because none of us. I have a great friend in Air Marshal Khosla who just mentioned that how he's completely tri-service and Purple Army Higher Command goes, and we serve together at the Naval Headquarters, at the Western Naval Command Headquarters. And I made sure that he was there for every briefing, even if there was no requirement of Air Force. Many times I used to tell him, I said, no, you have to come. You are my CNC Air Command. And this is what I used to address. Right up to Air Headquarters, I used to go and sound that, he's the right guy. And having flown the maritime Jaguars, he had a fairly good insight into this operational stuff. So thank you, and thank you IIRF for giving us the opportunity to three of us. And God bless, and hopefully, we'll meet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.